Thank you everyone for joining us today at Bloomberg. So my name is Monique White, and I head the News, AI, and Information Extraction Group. And yes, to Justin's point, this did not really exist until about 3-4 years ago. And I think I'm in the same situation as a lot of my panelists today, where we're very excited about the intervention of AI, machine learning, computer into the media world. And today we're going to share a little bit about their experiences in that domain. So Haile, can you please introduce yourself, tell us where you work, and what has you the most excited about your job today?
Sure. I'm Haile Owusu. I'm the SVP of Analytics, Decisions, and Data Sciences at Turner Broadcasting, now Warner Media Group. My role involves really attending to all of the data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence needs of the various brands at Turner, which includes CNN, TBS, TNT, Cartoon Network, etc. I am most excited about, my background is in physics, and I think as a physicist, it never even remotely occurred to me that you could speak quantitatively to people's tastes. And I think despite myself, I've become a data scientist, continue to be a data scientist in media, and the prospect of really, really delivering on a quantitative understanding of people's taste and delivering that in a myriad of experiences, in connected homes, in extremely directed narratives, remains very, very fascinating to me.
Thank you.
Great.
Sage?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sage Wohns, CEO and co-founder of Agolo. And the one-word pitch for Agolo is that we work in summarization. We're a data science startup here in New York that was founded out of Columbia University and actually presented at the first version of this about 3-4 years ago, Personalisation Palooza over at Hearst Tower. And there we met some of our first investors, Thomson Reuters and a couple other institutions, including Microsoft and CRV, one of the oldest VCs out in the Valley. And one thing that really gets me excited today is actually one word again, voice. Voice is the natural platform for what we work in, and a lot of the scientists on our team have dedicated their lives to, and that's natural language processing summarization, which is really the ability for a machine to read and write at scale. And because it's a machine, it can read at a machine scale. It reads around 600,000 documents every day, and it can write, to the previous point, around 2 million unique summaries every day, because it's really writing personalized summaries for each of those recipients.
Hi, my name is Sowmya. I work for NBCUniversal. I run innovation team at NBCUniversal. One of the major areas of focus for me is AI and machine learning. So what I'm really excited about is we've been looking at how we can leverage AI, meaning NLP, computer vision, all these technologies, and voice as well, to really make our content much more powerful and intelligent. In the age of consumption, where people are consuming content on all various digital platforms, it's no longer tethered to TV per se. So how do we efficiently distribute our content to all these different platforms and make sure consumers actually get what they want? For that, the content needs to be intelligent. When you search on YouTube or wherever you're getting your content from, and Sage said, voice is going to be, natural language is going to be predominantly how we all search. So when you search for an episode of Friends where something happened, today it's impossible to find that kind of a content. So we are working towards how do we make that content intelligent so that people can access it much more easily. Similarly, we are also looking at internally how can we improve our internal systems, make them more efficient so that our processes are faster and more efficient.
Hi, I'm Anju. I actually work with Monique. I head all the AI engineering efforts at Bloomberg. We support several products, including editorial, which is how I know Monique from. I'd repeat pretty much everything that the panelists said about what has me excited. Just to throw in an orthogonal component, I worked at Watson before this, and having been in academia and the theoretical realm for a long time, what has me really excited, and many people in my team who have a similar background, is to be able to reach consumers of meaningful content and help them help produce and consume meaningful content, which, from leaping from theory into practice, it's been quite interesting. And the possibilities of the future are also very exciting.
Thank you, Anju. Actually, you are giving me the perfect intro to our first questions. So let's talk about the consumer and today's consumer in the media world. So everybody's aware it's multiplication of outlets, content, and the real difference here that we're facing nowadays in the media industry is how our consumer is consuming the news. The news for Bloomberg, the entertainment, past episodes, archives of movie, etc. So where do you see the practical immediate application of changing traditional media organization and really getting on board these new revolutions, especially when it comes to consumers?
So, it's quite clear that that's one of the seminal changes that things like machine learning and artificial intelligence have ushered in is a new way of actually searching for content, right? I mean, you have to, and the artificial intelligence essentially opens up a wide set of opportunities for recommending in favor of one's taste. And my experience in media organizations is that really changes the mindset around content creation. Essentially, editorial folks, content creators have to orient themselves around the fact that the first point of contact, the first point of contact for their content with the user, the intermediary between that is an algorithm, and that's a sea change for most media organizations.
Sowmya, I think you had a few things on this topic you're also very interested in sharing.
Sure. So our focus has been not so much on, well, it is personalization and recommendation, but that's really based on preferences, not based on what you previously watched, so that we're not, to your point, we're not pushing the people into these echo chambers. But the way we are approaching it is understanding the preferences and then curate the content based on the preferences. For example, if there is a, take news as an example, right? Well, you have a 1 hour long news show, and there are several topics that are discussed within that show. And I may not be interested in all the topics. I might be interested in a particular topic called, let's say, Brexit. I want to know, what happened in Brexit today, so I should be able to get that 2-minute clip where Brexit was discussed or a particular Apple stock was discussed, things of that nature. So based on my preferences, can I get a curated playlist as opposed to watching, all day long show and finding out where exactly my interests were, discussed. So that's the kind of approach we are taking. Similarly, headline news. Can I get a curated headline news instead of a long form news? That kind of stuff we have been working on.
And if I can add, your product is very interesting here in the media, and I think across everyone, where we're talking about voice, we're talking about natural language processing, but how do you address that when your files are really, it can be TV, it can be a movie. What if what we're searching for is that one emotional moment? It doesn't have voice. Like, how do you imagine yourself handling that, where the search goes just beyond voice?
So when you look at a video, there are many aspects to it. One is obviously the audio part, right? You got to analyze the audio part and extract the keywords associated with it. And of course, there are different algorithms that you apply to extract what really are the keywords, right? So you apply clustering and named entity recognition, those kinds of algorithms to extract the right set of data from the audio. And you match that to video, and within that, you do image analysis, video analysis, the people, and then lower third OCR, text recognition, the graphs, and all of that. So you extract that data. Similarly, there is a sentiment API that you could use. So there are a number of APIs that you can take advantage of, and depending on the use case, you apply those different algorithms and extract data that is relevant to that particular use case. For example, in my world, When you talk about CNBC or MSNBC, it's a totally different use case or totally different set of video versus when you take a Bravo show, which is a more of a reality, conversational. There are no lower thirds graphs on the screen, none of that. So you have to apply different techniques to understand that video versus this video, and then create a use case that is relevant to that audience.
Thank you. And then Sage, in your world, I mean, you are directly addressing the issue of content proliferation. So can you describe a little bit your product and maybe some of your clients, like the game-changing solution you may have offered them?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's two fundamental areas where we work. In media, it's versioning content specifically for voice, where there's an institution who's in the room who I won't name, but they created a platform inside their CMS where they had a column where they wanted their editors to write summaries of the content, specifically for voice as well as for keeping their team up to speed on what's happening. That column had been empty for about 2.5 years. None of the editors wanted to write those summaries. What we can do is write those summaries at machine scale, hence the 2 million summaries that we produce every day. So that way, when you ask your Alexa a question, it will be able to answer it immediately with real-time information. For example, if you ask it today, like what's going on in Venezuela or Alabama, it will answer with a generated response saying, according to the Associated Press, for example, one of the customers who we work with for this use case, it will reply a summary for you. But that summary is not read by a machine. I mean, it's read by a machine and it's written by a machine as well, because our algorithm reads the original long-form content and then creates an audio version of it, because the #1 complaint that Alexa had received previously was that the content was simply too long for their platform, and no one really enjoyed that experience. And also that opens up the opportunity for the user to be able to go a step deeper, to say, what's happening in Venezuela, and then what exactly does this mean? And to have a follow-up response generated for you as well. So it generates basically the answer that you can go into more depth in with that platform. So that's a media use case that we work with. We also generate newsletters and things like that. Anywhere where you see a summary, that's really where we sit. And specifically multi-document. And multi-document summaries are also valuable for a lot of the financial consulting and business process automation users which we have, which is the second use case, where they consume, one of our users, to ground it in a real example, bought a data set of every local newspaper across the US, and actually international too. It's not human scalable to read that content, but what we were able to do is read it at scale and notice certain patterns here and there by clustering, previously mentioned, as well as summarization. So they're able to say that, for example, Macy's is closing stores in Ohio and Iowa. And that will be clustered together, and then a synopsis will be generated for them. And will look like an analyst spent day and night combing through 6,700 local newspapers to create that bit of intelligence for you, but it was actually done at machine scale. So those are the two use cases that we typically support. Now there's a lot of other different things going on there as well, but those are ones that are primarily powered by news.
Thank you. And Anju, you have a very interesting perspective. So you're supporting the newsroom here at Bloomberg, but I think going back to your point of you're enjoying the challenges of the practical application of AI and machine learning. Can you walk us through maybe an example of where you see the AI application being very specific for the media news world versus a different financial application?
Yeah, I think we support several. So, first of all, we do support use cases very similar to what the panelists here mentioned. But one of the things that we do support, one of the teams we support, is editorial in a large content, and that's a very different use case from maybe communications or even news, where we are analyzing both Bloomberg and non-Bloomberg content. When you talk about supporting the editorial staff, we do kind of two things at the very least. One is to be able to extract content from a wide variety of sources, your revenues and other financially relevant concepts. It's a little different from what we do or what people do in my field, because of not only the latency requirement, which you can mostly engineer around, but also the precision requirements. We're talking about not making a mistake over and over and over again. So that's a unique, and it brings unique challenges to machine learning. Certainly you're aware of many of these, and that's one of the things. And in general, when we talk about creating content for us, I think the opportunity for creating better content for the consumers is something that AI brings to fore, both because of use cases like, we can read more documents through machines than not, but it also brings challenges because, you're ending up reading documents that are also generated by other machines. So at what point do you actually know you're summarizing? So you might all be just summarizes over and over again. So those are challenges that we deal with.
Okay, so now that you bring content, let's jump to my second question, which is, we're talking about news, we talk about media content, and machines, and always the hot topic that I hear over and over again is like, okay, well, where's the human being, where does the journalist, where does it fit in that equation? I think one of the big topic that we have right now in the news world is, okay, AI is here, but what is the content? Is it a combo of machine algorithms and the human, I'm going to call him? Is it fully automated? And I also really want to open this to discuss is what are really the new type of jobs that you see? Because I think for me, that's the most exciting part is that, yes, I'm in the newsroom, I represent the editorial journalist, and I just see it's like there are really, really new capabilities forming and new skills being asked. Haile?
Yeah, so, I think I'm generally fairly wary of, just to declare my upfront opinion, I'm generally wary of the idea that there is a wholesale, that AI implies a wholesale replacement of the human. My sense is that these extraordinary capabilities that are provided to us by the advances in AI imply a virtuous human AI combo. I think we see this sort of human AI combo in, very, very, diving down deeply in CMSs where there are NLP capabilities that exist inside the CMS. This is an augment. You can envision an augment to a journalist's existing processes, so that they're able to be much more effective with their time. But the last thing I can envision is a wholesale replacement of the journalist. And if we think about kind of entertainment content creation, for example, we are actually at a place where AI offers the opportunity to generate slews of very realistic human beings. And I don't mean sort of CGI crafted, guided, molded by a human being. I mean really human realistic, GAN generated images. And you can envision kind of a Black Mirror future where whole entertainment, the whole sitcoms are generated by a computer. I think for most people that's a fairly grim proposition. So I'm AI plus human being combo all the way.
So could you imagine, I'm not going to name the show, but the algo having a little bit of an input, rewriting the ending of the stories based on sentiments?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I personally have to be fairly careful about how I answer that question. I mean, I could envision it. Should I sanction it? I don't know. But yes.
I just wanted to spice things up. Yeah. You don't have to answer. Sage.
Yeah. So one of the many holy grails in machine learning is reinforcement learning in this area. And so it's not in our benefit to create a total machine-to-machine, communication layer. Having that human in the loop will make the machines better ultimately. That's one of the reasons why we're really excited about voice. And when you asked about what excites me, voice, like at the beginning, voice came first, but reinforcement learning was a close second. I almost said that right when we came out the gate. Because working with that human will reinforce the machine and create better summaries for us over time, better content over time, and ultimately a better product for everyone. So while people might be driving for that ultimate machine-driven future, it's not in our benefit to drive towards that at all. Yeah.
And I would agree with the same sentiment as well. Again, in my world, where we are having to, when we look at our workforce, our journalists and editors and all the staff, their workload just tripled, quadrupled, or maybe more, right? Because it used to be, we used to produce content just for TV, and then came web and mobile, and now it's Snapchat and Instagram and so many different platforms we had to produce the content for, but it's the same set of people that are trying to do all these jobs. So it's like they're having a hard time keeping up with all of this. So to me, when we apply AI, it actually helps them, so that some of the routine tasks can be automated so that they can actually produce more content, a much more, smarter content for these platforms and address a lot more platforms where consumers are. I think that's how I see AI helping us as opposed to like replacing the jobs or anything. It's more of an augmentation.
And just to add to Sage comments regarding reinforcement training, how do you see that integrating, so in the platform that you described, with your consumer, with your teams, and then the product that you're designing? Where do you see that integration happening? So your consumer, as they're doing the search, like how do you create that continuous loop to get that feedback, to get that customization for your client?
So when take, I guess, any of our mobile platforms where we publish our content today, they basically get, you scroll through and read the content or watch the content. In future, you should just be able to ask a question, and then we should be able to give you that content. Similarly, we put a lot of our content on Alexa platform. Even though Alexa is voice enabled, but still a lot of it is very much hard coded. You gotta give it will only respond if you hard code the command in the code, right? It's not really AI per se. I mean, Amazon applied AI, but we are not in terms of getting the content out onto the platform. So there is some of that is still evolving, and we can apply AI so that when you ask a question, regardless of what question you ask, Alexa should be able to respond. Today it can't. So that's how I see the voice. Or you go to YouTube and say, give me the content, so and so, Friends or Seinfeld Soup Nazi episode. Today it can't give you that, but in future I think that's where it will be. So that's how I see it. Yeah.
So. I kind of agree with most of them, so that's disappointing, I guess, in a panel. But a couple of things. So one, as far as we have to be careful about asking a specific question when we say, can AI do it all the way, or are humans needed? So news, right? I'm with Haile. I think humans are always needed. And we have to be a little mindful that it's not just journalists who are needed, but when we talk about AI taking over some aspects of news, well, I write algorithms, so I'm human, I'm involved there, right? So it's not like these codes are writing themselves yet. That's one. But then you talk about maybe popular content. One of the things is, recommendation today is, here is a show, who can I reach the show out to, who can meaningfully and enjoy this content? Another way of thinking about it, which I'm sure my friends in the media have, you can provide a template of a show, and then everyone watches a different show based on a broad theme. So there's personalization of a variety of kinds that I'm sure everyone here is planning about. So there, I think it's a meaningful value add, because that scale of the diversity of the content that will hit every single human on Earth is hard to achieve without some machine assistance. So we might never watch the same show.
Thank you. Okay, so you're mentioning personalization of content, and one of the questions that I feel comes in very often is, we're personalizing, but we're using algorithm. So in a way, and I think to your comment to Alexa, some of the things are still hard-coded. What is the fear that you have around simply creating an echo chamber where the same algorithms are picking up the same trend, and therefore we're just redistributing the same content, but then we're losing a little bit the diversity, we're losing the outlier? Like how do you think is the right way to manage for that?
It's a hard question, to be sure. First and foremost, it's something that we're extremely cognizant about. Certainly in our news brand, but our entertainment brands as well. The notion of actively engineering our audience into really tough filter bubbles is something that we try to be cognizant of. How you actually avoid filter bubbling, that's a very involved process. It's not simply an algorithmic question. There's the algorithmic part of that is actually the only the easiest part. The filter bubble is created by some combination of the algorithm, the overlying product, and the human interaction. And you have to have essentially a fairly tight experimental loop there in order to kind of monitor the extent to which the filter bubble is even occurring, and then probe tactics for avoiding it.
Especially, I can imagine in terms of content search, trying to promote things, and then having that fine line between, yes, I know you tasted this way, but why don't you try something completely different?
Yeah. So we do talk about this a lot again with our news brand in particular. We're all aware of the negative implications of filter bubbles around political inclination, and so we have bandied about ideas wherein we understand that we serve a certain predilection, but do we take ad hoc measures to ensure that we're sort of sprinkling in a bit of diversity, monitoring the reaction, and kind of dialing back or increasing the amount of kind of sprinkled diversity that we have in there? This remains kind of an unresolved question for us, but an active area of research.
That's very interesting. Sage, I see you nodding your head.
That's exactly what we've seen as well. Basically, it's an unresolved area that I think will be of endless interest and an endless field for thought and communication as well, where sprinkling in that diversity is the only solution that we've seen so far for that, really. But it's just the beginning. There needs to be endless thought about this, because the implications are really dangerous, honestly. And I think it's an area that places who haven't called themselves media in the past have failed to take sort of ownership of, and that's been a net negative. So it's something that requires constant attention and constant experimentation in that field. And I don't think anyone will have a real answer for this yet. And I actually hope they never do, because it's something that we need to constantly be aware of and constantly monitoring. And yeah, there's many different experiments that we're running in that area. Looking at the data first and being, doing like topic-based centrality salience and things like that to be able to actually see what the documents are discussing rather than what people are actually looking for is, just an algorithmic solution where, like, I don't think there's any one definitive solution.
Just to add to that, I think, that's obviously algorithmic and media taking some of the responsibility. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, the way I look at it is, it's fairly new. These problems are fairly new. It is such a fast evolving problem that, we are all just trying to understand now and try to grapple with it. So obviously solution is not there yet. But I think as consumers, we are also starting to think a little bit carefully. I myself these days, when I look at my newsfeed, I'm like, why am I getting only this? I don't want to just, one time I was interested in the topic, but I'm no longer, so can we please stop it? I'm very conscious about it. Yeah. And now I actually go to different areas to get my, well-rounded news as opposed to just one publication. So I'm making a conscious effort for myself. So I have a feeling that, people also, there will be some cultural change, evolution as well in this field, in addition to machines.
And Anju, maybe for you, I can change the question a little bit, because I think for your perspective, this is more addressing maybe training bias, training silos.
Yeah. So personalization in and of itself is neither bad nor is it new. I think maybe it's exaggerated. One thing that maybe it's a different point of view is I strongly believe that it's one thing to cater to someone, whether it's financial news or something else, but it's another to also have availability of diversity of content. And I think Bloomberg does a great job at that. You can certainly go to like news functions that everyone who logs into that function receives exactly that content, and that makes you understand what generally people are reading about. And I think it's important to have something that's not personalized that way. The second is, we shouldn't ignore the role of education in all this. We are talking about cogent human beings. They should understand that what they're seeing might not be a representative opinion or content of people around them. So a little bit of it is also just good old education.
I'll just quickly add that, along those lines, there's one of the things that AI and media has I think created or should create is a set of practitioners, engineers, and data scientists and machine learning researchers who are concerned at an ethical level about the implications of what they create. Obviously, this is not unique to media, but only in media do you really see these really sort of global implications for algorithmic bias. And from my perspective, and I think the perspective of my organization, there's a certain set of ethics one has to come to algorithm creation with in order to kind of hedge against some of the downsides of these algorithmic biases.
Thank you. I think now we want to open the floor to questions in the audience for some of our panelists. I don't know if we have a mic. Yes. We have a mic. Just 1 second.
Hi, I'm Dick Reisman, and is this on? Question, especially for Haile and Sage, but sort of reflecting on the comments. Generally, the national news is sort of like the global water cooler, but on the filter bubble, there's sort of an approach that's interesting, which has to do with the idea of surprising validators that Cass Sunstein wrote about a number of years ago, which is that if you have a polarized view, say you don't believe in climate change, but someone who previously did not believe in climate change suddenly starts saying they do believe in it, then they have some credibility and you don't discount them and you let them into you don't get the cognitive bias and the assimilation bias in that case. So it seems that an algorithm could apply this to figure out who are the surprising validators for an individual and surface those things selectively. So I'm curious whether anyone has seen any effort to do this or whether you see that as something worth pursuing.
That's a really interesting frame for the filter bubble conversation. I think one of the challenges that we have is that we are not a social network per se. So soliciting, the kind of scenario that you described, this kind of conversion event, is actually something we don't have a ton of visibility on, right? And so currently the way that we think about this doesn't really admit that kind of those kinds of signals in our consideration of filter bubbles. But
well, just to put it in a Bloomberg context, if an analyst who's been very pro a company suddenly goes negative and is the first to do so, that would sort of be a surprising validator of
yeah.
a minority.
So maybe from the Bloomberg's perspective, I would say that our point of view in the company is to showcase all the different opinions. I think from our integrity as journalists, we are not going to necessarily filter opinions. We may to your point highlight on unexpected events, but I think for us it's always highlight the unexpected and then showing the rest of the baseline. We're like, here's the norm, here's one outlier, and then having our users make their opinion of how they want to interpret it. Oh, we have another question?
I've got a quick question for a lot of the underlying machine learning algorithms that you guys are using to start parsing through this massive amount of text and data. Where do you see the most corrections needed? And I feel like a lot of machine learning algorithms, one of their worst sort of tendencies is their inability to correct, or sort of this is where your sort of human intervention comes in. And I'm wondering, where do you guys see it drifting off the most in terms of analysis, summaries, and where you have to intercede the most?
Sage, would you be interested?
Yeah, we just published a blog post about debugging in TensorFlow. It's actually really hard to do. And it's not something that they've actually opened up that much. So the science team just published that. So it's definitely something we're aware of. To get like really tangible on the B2B2C side, what we saw in specifically summarization from long form text to like audio text was an example of quote attribution, where inside of the long form document, it would say, this is the best idea I've ever heard, said Jeff Bezos. That's not how you consume things in an audio or even in a short form manner. So we have to reattribute that quote, and that actually, so one, now we're rewriting sentences, and that gets into a tricky territory because you don't actually want machines doing that much. You want human authorship for a lot of these things for a full audit trail back to the original sources. So we had to create basically a very specific, focused deep learning algorithm to be able to rewrite those sentences for proper attribution. And then you get into the areas where it said, like, instead of saying said Jeff Bezos, it said Bezos. So we have to rewrite it doing Amphora to be able to rewrite it at the beginning saying Jeff Bezos said this. So to get very specific on your answer, that's one of the areas where we had, it was a recurring issue, and then we trained a specific algorithm to solve that specific problem. But there's several examples in that area, but that's the one that comes to mind first.
Sowmya, you have
Sure. So about 6 to 8 months ago, we've done extensive evaluation of various capabilities like Microsoft, AWS, Google, a whole bunch of startups and mid-sized companies, etc. On the whole, when you talk about accuracy, some are better than others, and it varies from anywhere from 50% to 95%, right? So like I said, some people are better at NLP, some are better at image analysis, some are better at sentiment, language identification, things of that nature. But bottom line is nobody is 100% accurate, and because it is such a very brand new field, it is still evolving. But it's evolving really fast. Whatever I found 6 months ago, it's probably no longer accurate, and I will have to redo that effort again now, and I'll see vastly different results. Having said that, given it is such evolving field, at least 6 months ago, nobody really had tools for you to correct the data that you got. It's true, I'm not even exaggerating. They just didn't develop the tools where you can actually correct it, and they can take that feedback and improve their algorithms, because it is so new. So we actually worked with a couple of companies. Hey, we do need these kinds of tools, so we can actually, you're giving wrong data, so we can correct it so that you can take it, learn it, and then next time you give the correct answers. That is, I think, work in progress is at best, I would say.
If I could jump in on that, sure. I think you touched on something that really resonates with me, which is specifically that a lot of these platforming solutions aren't going to go that deep into any of these areas to solve really specific problems. It's not going to be a platform play. There's not going to be one, famous last words, there's not going to be one AI company, Cyberdyne from Terminator, that does everything. It's going to be, this guy does the vision, this group does the text understanding, she does the voice really well, and it will be those different solutions all created together. Like whenever you look at something that close enough, it starts to fragment, and you see the little pieces that put together the puzzle. And that's absolutely where we are today and where we're going to be, I think, in the next 10, 20 years for this.
Anju, I think you have some opinion, since I know your requirements of extreme high precision.
Right, so we have sometimes we have the pleasure of working with very high quality data, because it's not always that we are looking at just Twitter. So in some input domains, yes, there's a lot of noise, and certainly we do need human intervention to kind of clarify what has been said and whether it's the right thing. But there's also mathematical ways of addressing or building into that noise, because unless it is a pathological injunction of such noise, on average, the right thing surfaces up anyway. But in other domains, like when we look at Bloomberg authored content over so many years, certainly the noise levels there are ignorable almost. So there we don't need that kind of intervention.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah.
I can repeat the question if it's not working. I can hear you. I can just repeat the question.
So the question about text summarization, and specifically one of the challenges in AI is that there's too much material even for researchers to keep up. So now, are you aware of any efforts to do summarization for the people actually working in the field? And would there be a gap between
It's going to be hard for me to repeat this question. I think you mentioned, is there any effort for us to create material that allows researchers to evaluate their summarization systems better? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. At least at Bloomberg, there certainly is. We've had data science research grants and fellowships. Last year, one of the grants went to a researcher who is working in summarization, and we are helping them understand what good summaries are as far as Bloomberg is concerned. One of my interns this year is working on summarization. So yeah, I think pretty much every organization you will ask, and I can only speak for Bloomberg, we are creating resources so that summarization, which has, it's a specific question you have to ask. Again, summarization means different things to different people. To some people, it's the length of the summary. To some people, it's the accuracy. To some people, it is the good old human comprehension. Back in the day, we went to school, and the way that our teachers said, well, Anju understands this or not, is ask us a bunch of questions. So another way of saying is, if I look at the main document and then the summary of the document, can I answer the same set of questions or not? So certainly, I think there's a lot of research there. Oh, red light flashing there.
So that metric is actually called Rouge, where you measure the original document to the summary. That's the most classical summarization method to evaluate. But there's a whole new field coming out of Rachel, I think, Bronstein's office in UPenn, who we work with, who actually is pioneering a new field for comprehension of the actual summary, the human equivalent. And that's specifically valuable for voice. So we've been sponsoring research there to be able to help that. And also, the most famous name in summarization is Kathy McEwen up at Columbia.
Yeah.
And she was our academic advisor for a lot of the PhDs in our team. And this is an area, again, of interesting development. You know, summarization has been around for, like, what, I think 70, 80 years for that field. But specifically for the different measurement mechanisms, that's a whole entirely different field to be able to evaluate summaries well. And programmatic evaluation of summaries is one of the things that I'm most excited about for Rachel's team coming out of UPenn, hence sponsoring.
I think we're out of time, so I want to thank very much all our panelists for coming and joining us today at New York City Media Lab. And we're going to have another couple great panelists, so please stick around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.